in 2010, there was something about how that changeover really affected like the job for people that were working in projection at the time. Like, and how did that impact you?
That was a really big deal, and particularly New York and LA, where there's a lot of union projectionists.
Mhm.
And I mean, not just screening rooms, private screening rooms and post houses, but multiplexes.
Yeah.
And that's really where the impact was really bad, was in the multiplexes. When they all went digital, all of these folks lost their jobs like in one swoop. And it happened pretty much nationwide, but they really targeted New York and LA first, probably to like kill the unions, really, but didn't totally kill them, but because there's so much production that goes on in New York and LA, so it didn't totally, but it wasn't easy.
Yeah.
So a lot of guys lost their jobs, and the job market got suddenly like more competitive and intense.
Yeah.
That was in 2010, and it was soon after that Woody stopped shooting on film, and I actually got laid off. And then I just left New York so I wouldn't have to pay the rent here.
Yeah.
And just kept doing festivals. I just like stayed in that route. But like I said, like it got to a point where we were no longer prepping these big reels. And suddenly it was like all of these hard drives. It didn't happen in 1 year in the festival world. Like the way it happened in multiplexes was like overnight. But the way it happened in a film festival environment, it was sort of like a transition over like a few years. And then when we were showing film, it became more special because it was suddenly we were like, oh, we have to do that other thing again. Okay, how did we do that? You know? And, you know, it's exciting. But then, you know, then there were like these big releases like Tarantino and Chris Nolan, you know, with Hateful Eight was a big deal. And I remember
that was one of the 5 films. I remember you calling me being like, go see Hateful Eight in 70 millimeter.
No.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah, you were like, it's no, but it was from the projectionist point of view. You were like, it's not about the film.
No,
it's about.
I actually kind of appreciated the way the falling snow looked.
This is what I'm talking about. It was the quality of the image. Like,
and the fact that you didn't have to do this constantly.
I really appreciated like how sparkly the snow looked in 70 millimeter coming down. It was really, really kind of magical.
Yeah. That's what I'm talking about.
But it's worth it.
It doesn't matter what film it was, really.
You know, and
sparkling snow.
I remember telling you like, whatever with Dune 2, seeing it on 70 because it wasn't really shot like it's digitized and all of this stuff. It's not really like watching an old 70 millimeter movie, and we ran it in 70, but then we just ran it in digital the other day, and I was looking at it and I was like, it really looks like shit on digital. Even the 70 looks better than that. So anyways, all right, I digress. Back, rewind.
Yeah.
So where was I? What?
We're talking about
Sparkling
like
snow.
doing
Losing your
DCP, losing your job. Yeah.
Yeah. So I left New York and I just kept doing festivals and sorry, I've lost my.
That's okay.
I've lost a moment here. Whoops.
Well, you had like a huge hard decision to make. I remember all this. You were like, I don't exist anymore.
Oh.
And I'm going to change my entire career at 30-something years old.
Well, it was more than that. I mean, I also became a mom.
You just had like a massive career change. You were like...
Yeah, I was a little bit like freaking out about being a film festival carny as a mom, so it was hard. But also it was at the same time that all this digital stuff was happening too. And I just didn't really see where this was going. Like all of us felt like, you know, our days were numbered and we were quickly becoming dinosaurs. We were being basically automated out, you know.
Yeah.
That's how it felt in a lot of ways. Like, who's going to want to pay for our expertise when what it looks like is a hard drive going into a server and hitting play? You know, they don't know that you have to go pause. Calmly.
I don't know.
Calmly.
I think there's something to like say about it because you went through this then, I feel like the industry right now is going through it with
watching it
with AI.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So how do you correlate those two times? Do you see like what's happening again, sort of?
I'm nervous for you guys.
Me too.
Me too. Me three.
Yeah.
I mean, but at the same time, like we felt like it was all over, our days were numbered. And then, with Hateful Eight, the thing that happened was Tarantino and all of his wallets were like, let's make this happen. We want to do this big, wide 70 millimeter release. And what happened was this tech company that techs a lot of festivals, or did at the time. Their name is Boston Light and Sound, and yes, they're based out of Boston, but they literally, like, I worked with them internationally. They're huge, and they literally went around the country. This is after the digital rollover, so I have to backtrack.
Yep.
During the digital rollover, in the contracts with the financiers for this huge infrastructure change in multiplexes, digitizing them, in the contracts were these stipulations that the 35 millimeter machines needed to be removed from the booth.
Yeah.
These are huge
That's
machines.
heartbreaking.
These platters are enormous. Like, they take up like a whole section of this room. Like, and if you think of a 14-plex, that's a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And so all of these theaters had to like get rid of these machines. They couldn't, if they stayed in the booth, they couldn't be aimed at a screen. So literally you could walk into these multiplex booths, and I would during festivals, we would sometimes use multiplex projection booths as venues for the time of the festival. And you'd literally walk in and there would be all of these projectors just aimed into the middle of the room away from screens. They're all looking at you, like these cameras are looking at me right now. Hi. But all these projectors would be looking at you. It was so eerie, right?
Huh.
Because they can't be aimed at the screen. In some cases, movie theaters would literally build walls around their equipment and entomb it so that it wouldn't be in the same room as the digital equipment.
What?
Yeah. So somewhere out there is an entombed, like, projector and platter, Yeah, it was nuts. It was so nuts.
It almost feels like they're sending a message rather than like, on top of like making the change
it was
over.
a very serious message of, we don't need you anymore. This is over. We've invented this technology that's eliminated the human beings. Yeah, that's really how it felt.
Jesus.
And so now enter Quentin Tarantino and like this whole Hateful Eight release. And what happened is Boston Light and Sound went all over the country there were all of these projectors and platters that were just sitting in places like doing nothing. Mm-hmm. And so they just went and swept them all up, and people were psyched to get them off their hands, and like brought them back to their giant warehouse in Massachusetts and transformed them into 70 millimeter platters. So they weren't originally 70 platters. They turned them into 70 millimeter platters for Hateful Eight. And they transformed a lot of these projectors into 70 millimeter projectors they were 35 projectors. Yeah. So they made all of this equipment happen. And then they went and dispersed it around the country for the release of Hateful Eight, which was like around Christmas, whatever year that was. And then they went around and hired all of these projectionists to go around the country and run and give up Christmas with their families to go run Tarantino's Hateful Eight, which happened to a lot of folks that I knew, and they made good money doing it. And then Nolan came around and was like, well, now that there's infrastructure for this, I'm going to do it too.
Yeah.
And he did it, with Dunkirk, and then just now with Oppenheimer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So suddenly we went from being dinosaurs to being like boutique.
Boston Light and Sound.
That's so dope.
Yeah.